Okay, so is there a certain criteria you used when you're picking a client?
Well, I mean, they call me, so like much though I wanted the fellow who shot the insurance executive in Manhattan to call, it just didn't work out that way.
Right.
But I look for client cases that interest me, that raise significant constitutional issues or philosophic issues that I can explore the contours of the law in. Every case is obviously about an allegation that somebody broke the law, but really
Mhm.
what a case invites is an examination of what the law is and how it's applied
Right.
justly and fairly. So I look for hard cases.
And I'm assuming you look for things that you could beat with using the law as opposed to whether or not the person is innocent or not, correct?
I don't ever ask that question of innocence because, I sometimes people, sometimes a client will confess to something. I'll say, "Why'd you do that?" And they'll, confession's good for the soul. Well, that the soul is something you take up with God. I'm here to protect your worldly interests, and you're innocent and you're presumed innocent unless proven guilty. And so my job is to defend a person against the allegations. If the state proves them, the state wins. If I can prevent the state from proving them, the state doesn't win. But nothing that takes place in a criminal courtroom makes the world right again. I don't know how many
Mm,
murder cases I've done, and nobody's ever been brought back to life. The one of the
right.
worst experiences I ever had in a courtroom was, I beat a murder case, and I was walking out of the courtroom into the area before the elevator, and I ran into the victim's mother. And it was just the two of us alone for a moment. And I said, I am just so sorry for all that you've lost. And I'm so sorry for all that I may have put you through in this trial. Can I have a hug? And we hugged one another. And I said, I did my job and I would have done the same for your son had she come to me, and she understood. Or in another
Right.
case, a murder case, this one I lost. My client was alleged to have shot someone to death over a girl in the presence of witnesses who knew him for a lifetime. There wasn't much we
Mm.
could do with that, but he didn't want to agree to a plea deal of 40 or 50 years in prison, so we fought the case. Um, at the end, in Connecticut, juries don't know the sentence. They just make a decision, guilty or not. After he was sentenced to 45 years, one of the jurors called me spitting with rage. Why didn't you tell us what could happen? I said, because the law doesn't permit it. But let me ask you a question. Would you have voted differently if you knew? And she paused for a moment and she said, no. And I said, welcome to my world. So um, I, I find the drama of what goes on in a courtroom the most interesting thing going. And I
Mhm.
just can't walk away from it. I love trial.
Right. I mean, I'm curious, listening to you, what your thoughts were. Did you watch the Casey Anthony trial as that unfolded? I mean, I think as someone who I love that sort of showmanship in the courtroom as well, and to watch what Jose Baez did at the end there, where he completely switched what happened and what we thought we knew for years, following, what this girl was doing and what we thought her defense would be, and then he spun the defense completely different and she ended up getting off. I think we were all stunned. Did you watch that trial?
No, I can never watch another person's trial. It's like watching ice melt. And so I'm aware of it. I mean, our paths, Mr. Baez's path and mine have crossed. I mean, we both interviewed for the Aaron Hernandez case. He got the case. I didn't. I'm told he promised Hernandez a miracle and pulled it off. I wouldn't make that promise, and I didn't get the
Mhm.
case. But I mean, the OJ case is the one that sticks into my mind so well. I was reasonably confident that he was going to be convicted. And when he wasn't, I was stunned. And I got to know F. Lee Bailey pretty well thereafter for the 10 years or 15 years or so. And we talked at length about the case. He was absolutely persuaded that OJ was innocent, or was innocent. Um, I think the showmanship of trial is fun. There's nothing more thrilling than cross-examining someone. It's five-dimensional chess in real time.
Mm. You mentioned that you would have loved to represent Mangione. Do you have to be called in a circumstance like that? Can you reach out to him? Could you have reached out to him and offered your services?
The rules of professional conduct are difficult, and it might surprise some of your listeners to realize that yes, lawyers have to obey ethical rules, and one is against solicitation. So I could have written him a letter, but under Connecticut law, I would have had to put in bold type, this is a solicitation, that kind of thing. As a matter of pride, I don't do it. I think of the decision to represent someone is akin to getting married. You're in it for sickness and in health, or sickness or health,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the outcome. And if you don't want me, don't take me. And I'm not going to pursue someone. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm their choice and we talk it out and they decide the terms work and I decide I can live with them, then we're going all the way to the end, whether it's happy or
Right.
unhappy. And I don't want you to have reservations about me. So if I pursue you, you're thinking I'm in it for the money or the fame, and I am. But I'm not going to pursue it to the detriment of your interests.
Well, let me ask you a question about that specific guy. It seems so obvious that he, in the court of public opinion and all the things that we have learned and seen, we know he did it, but he has pleaded not guilty. What is the uphill battle for his attorney going forward? And if it was your case, what would your defense be?
It would be an implicit nullification case. So the question of jury nullification is a complex one, but it means that a jury has the right not just to decide the facts, what occurred, but whether the law is correctly implied. Almost every jurisdiction in the United States prohibits jury nullification. Very few permit it. I think there are 3 that permit it. And so the challenge sometimes is to find a case where someone might have public sympathy, at least in some quarters, and get the jury to decide in favor of the defendant, even though he's guilty. Again, I remind you, it's not a moral enterprise that I'm involved in. I'm not about the reformation of souls, but on a semi-religious level, I mean, it's a rare client that I don't read Psalm 23 with, because I do view criminal defense as a sort of spiritual vocation. No one really is the sum of their worst moments, and we all have the dignity that comes with being God's creatures. And for me, there is no greater privilege than standing next to a despised person and having that person know that I will be there for him, whatever happens. And, I related back after 17 years of psychoanalysis, 4 times a day, or 4 times a week, 7 o'clock in the morning. I think I related back to my own experience in the Big Brothers program. I had a difficult childhood. It takes a village to raise a child. And I had houses that I could go to on Tuesday night for dinner, Wednesday night for dinner. Sometimes I'd stay out all night just to avoid going home because I was not welcome in my own. And so I know what
Mm.
it's like to be scorned. But one thing I could count on, if my big brother told me we were going to go to dinner and he said he'd be at a certain street corner at 5 o'clock and I waited for him there, he showed up. And I will
Mm.
always show up for the despised. I have no greater pleasure in life than that, no greater privilege than to be their go-to person. So with respect to this guy and the insurer, some people love him, some people hate him, but he needs
Hmm.
somebody that's prepared to fight to the death for him. And what did Jesus once say? Greater love hath no man than this, that you'll lay down your life for a friend. I always tell the young lawyers here, we should demonstrate that level of commitment, and you lay down your life for your client.
Do you think that because so many people have made him into somewhat of a hero, that it will be hard for some jurors to actually look at facts and, want him to get off?
Yeah, I think that, look, how do you defend a criminal case? First thing you ask yourself is, if the allegations are true, is it a crime? Well, if the allegations in this case are that he took a gun, shot a man in the back, it doesn't matter why he did it, that's a crime. That's not justified. And it's not good, and it's not praiseworthy. You may think that the executive had it coming. You may think there's a healthcare crisis in the United States. You can think any number of things, but the law doesn't permit us to take lives without consequences. And I think as a technical matter, the proof is probably sufficient to convict him 5 times over. The challenge is to see if you can beat the proof. I have 3 kids and 6 grandkids, by the way. But
Mhm.
none of my children became lawyers. And I like to think it's because I was too honest with them at dinner. I recall one year winning a case for somebody who tried to cut somebody's face off. And, my wife sees me come in the door in the evening. How was your day? Oh, it was all right. Weren't you on trial? Oh, yeah. How'd it go? I won. Oh, that's great. And she looks at the kids with pride. And my oldest says, what was the case about? Well, and I tell them, and their face fell, but for me, there's nothing better, nothing more satisfying than winning a case when they got your guy and you find a way to thwart them.
Right. Right. I really can imagine.
It's
All
a
right, let's
thrill.
talk.